I don't know about you, when I'm looking for a plumber, I like to read my reviews. HomeAdvisor.com gave me some reviews on our sponsor, Art of Plumbing. Called them. They arrived on time. Immediately found the plumbing issue and fixed it right the first time. I called them last year and it was great. I called them again this year because I had a problem again. They came out, they fixed the problem. They even gave me solutions to help stop the problem in the future at 541-9405. Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I'm your host, Neil Matthews. Want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We're super excited about today's episode. Before we get into it, though, I want to set the table for you. And hopefully you can take in this air that we're breathing now. We are in our 6th season, and you better believe it, we are on the lookout for joy because we're so excited about this season. Here's what it's going to involve. We're going to be sitting down with people who have a significant event in their mind, a date that stands out, a benchmark, a place where they're just like, you know what? I can remember that moment. Here's the date of when that happened. And Garrett and I believe that there is a date in everyone's mind and in everyone's story, and we cannot wait to tell that. Hopefully you'll join us this season as we begin season 6 of Other People's Shoes of What Happened When.
Hey, come take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I'm your host, Neil Matthews. Want to thank you again for joining us today. Super excited to get to our guest. I don't know about you. Have you ever been in that moment where you're stuck? You're stuck right where you are. Maybe it was that roadside moment, right, where you ran out of gas because you should have hit the gas station, but you went down the road anyway and you ran out of gas. Or maybe that moment where you were in that dark place where you thought there's no way I'm ever going to get out of this hole that I'm in. Well, help me welcome in my next guest. He is a brand new author. We're super excited. His book is available now. So we're going to hear more about that momentarily, but help me welcome in my guest. He is a Instagram just blowing up over there. He's on Facebook. He's on YouTube. He's doing all these amazing things, and he wants to help you with your start where you are now. Help me welcome in my guest, Rashawn Copeland. Rashawn, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, man? Neil, how are you doing?
Good, man. Where are you at? Because I've heard you're all over the place. So where did we pinpoint you today?
Today, I'm right here in the buckle of the Bible Belt, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Well, I guess Dallas would be the buckle. We're a little bit up north.
But you're in Oklahoma.
Yeah, Oklahoma.
That's awesome. So here's the thing. I dream of, with the show, right, having at least 50 people on from every state.
Wow.
So we can
really?
so we can now cross off Oklahoma, which I'm really excited about.
Sweet. How have you had anyone from I'm guessing you've had a lot of people from Oregon, huh?
We've had Oregon does dominate for sure. So Oregon, I mean, I could go through all the states, but nobody wants to sit here and listen to all the states being named off. But we did get to go out to Carolina recently, and I was excited about that because I am a huge University of North Carolina fan. So it was kind of cool to virtually, go to Carolina. So that was fun.
Love it. The Carolinas are beautiful. I almost told my wife that we're going to pack up and leave and go there. We have a lot of friends out there, that beloved friends. We love that place.
Yeah, I have never been to Oklahoma or Oklahoma City. So, but when I think of Oklahoma, there's two things that come to mind, right? So there's Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain. That was it. That's all you get. That's all I know.
Love it.
and then I gotta get a little sad when I think of Oklahoma City.
Really?
I think of what happened, with the building there, right?
Wow, yeah, and the Oklahoma City bombing.
Yeah. And I think about that, and when I think of Oklahoma, I think of those two things. And if I'm gonna go sports related, I also think of Kevin Durant. So we got that going. That I try to get a little positive there because we're talking about Oklahoma City. We got to talk about KD and So and of course Blake Griffin being Oklahoma Sooner, he was there too. By the way, we beat you in that tournament game. I just want to put that out there, Carolina.
Oh, but Oh, that's right. Yeah, you know Griffin's from Oklahoma, though, right?
I
That's
did.
what you're saying.
Right. No, I
Okay,
did.
good
No, I
deal, good
did.
deal.
Yeah, we beat you in the
Okay.
tournament that year. In fact, he dunks in the game and he hit his head on the lower part of the backboard and everybody's like, "Oh, look at that sick
Oh,
dunk." I'm like, "Yeah, but look at the scoreboard." I'm just saying, look at the scoreboard.
yeah.
So,
Woo,
there we are.
man. Okay, well, you got us there.
Yeah.
You got us there. But Boomer Sooners are better than the Oregon Ducks. So
That's fine. That's okay.
Oklahoma,
That's okay.
University of Oklahoma.
Yeah. That's all right. You can have that.
Okay.
That's fine. I'm not really a duck, so that's fine though. So
Okay.
so back to you, because I'm sure people didn't come to hear us like debate sports stuff, right? I'm sure that's not what they came to hear today. So
True.
you are a fascinating man to me, and there's a couple of reasons why you're fascinating to me. One, because I think you have a voice and a message that I think people need to hear, right? And I think it's one of these voices that maybe needs to become elevated, and not that you personally need to be elevated by no means, but your
Yes.
voice and your message in my mind needs to
Yes.
be amplified and elevated. So will you talk about that for a quick second? But before we get there, so ponder that, put a pin in that. We got to know this, of course, the most important question that any interviewer will ever ask you, and that's this. Rashard, what size shoes do you wear?
Man, great question. 11 and a half, my man. They out there. If I cut my toenails, it's probably no, I'm just playing 11 and a half.
And now we're in Rashard's shoes. I love that. I love that a lot. And so we got 11 and a half. That's a big size for us, but we're okay with that. And then is there a style or brand that you prefer more than another?
You know what? I don't know why, but Pumas are growing on me. A lot of people say Pumas are out of style, but I'm a Chuck Taylor and a Puma fan.
We've never had anyone wear Pumas. So you're also setting some precedent. The Oklahoma thing and now the
Nice.
Puma thing. So that's fun.
I know they're classics, old school, 60s, 70s, but man, I love them.
That's awesome. So back to this. Why do you feel like your message is so important, and that message, like I was alluding to, needs to be elevated so much?
Well, I think, the my message is to point people to the Messiah. So like I've lived such a messy life and been a broken man all my life in need of a savior, and God, he met me where I was. And I feel like there's people who are they're basically in a predicament. They're that Rashawn that didn't know that there's a God who's merciful and that will meet them in their mess, and and lead them out of it. And while he's leading them out of it, loving them out of it. So I didn't know that this God was a God who loved me for, me, but he showed it through his son and what he did for us, on that cross. And I always thought that it was some far off God. So I feel it's so important because my message is essentially is God's message, and to make a greater story for the people who are listening.
Well, I appreciate that too. And I guess for me, when I think about our life, right, and you think about your
Uh-huh.
life, maybe you're in this category. I think you are, because most of us are. Is there a significant date in your mind that you're really like, man, that changed everything? Is there a specific date that comes to mind for you?
Here's the day that stands out to me. It was December 29th, 2004. And that was the day I was shot down. Boom, 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 and left for dead. And I'll never forget it. But there was another day that stood out for me. June 25th, 2016. Time when I was out in Los Angeles, and I once had sat in this room holding a gun in my mouth. And, despite the money, despite the romantic relationship, I had, the girl that was at USC in law school, but on the side, I had a side chick, that I was, pursuing. I was a hedonist. I was indulging myself in anything and everything that was temporal, porn, sex, whatever, the flashy lifestyle that others envied. I had like all this stuff happening for me, but despite the outside success, I was miserable. on the inside. And God like literally met me when, I was on the verge of suicide, and that sort of brought a revival in me, the way he met me, which I can get into more. But yeah, he literally met me in my darkest place, in my deepest wound, and the glory of God dazzled me, and it changed everything. Are the master over those monuments.
Yeah, for sure. No, and I get that completely. And I think there is, again, this is just me. And again, maybe I'm just way off base here, but I think for me, when you think about a moment, right, you can put yourself back into that moment.
Yeah.
Not that you dwell there, not that you, waller there, or not that you just, whatever, but that moment that you can go back to, and again, go back to that calendar moment and go, man, back in this date, on this date, I can tell you exactly where I was when Kevin Durant got drafted. You know why?
Wow.
Because that's the day my daughter was born that Kevin Durant got drafted.
Dude, you're gifted, because you're very gifted. Like, that's amazing, bro. Like, I can't even, I remember the day my son was born, but I can't directly associate that with anything right now.
Well, because what I'm trying to, and it's cool, man. We're good. We're good. I feel like I'm beating you up a little bit, but
no, I love that. Though.
Okay, but what I guess what I'm trying to say is that for me, and again, the only reason why I remember the day Kevin Durant got drafted is because it's the day my daughter was born. My wife was we were still in the hospital, right? So she's, my daughter's born at like, 2:54 in the afternoon, and so we're still in the hospital, and so of course there's nothing to do. I can't really go anywhere. I'm not going to just bail, right?
Exactly.
As a dad, I want to take in every precious moment of this birth, right?
Yeah.
So my wife's laying there in the bed, and she doesn't have control over the remote because she's, she just gave birth, so she's resting and kind of, taking in being a mom now, and so of course I turn on ESPN, and lo and behold, the NBA draft's going on, and I see Greg Oden, talking about the Blazers, getting drafted by, Portland #1, and Durant goes #2. And I only remember that, again, the only reason why I have a pinprick, if you will, or a pinpoint there is because my daughter was born that day. So that's the only reason. I'm not like, and I'm not even like a huge Durant fan. I say that just to say, but I can remember that specific event because of that date, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. Now you better go down and watch him play. Have you seen him play in person yet?
I have never seen Durant play in person. No, I have not.
Got it. Okay, cool, bro. Cool. It's worth it a little bit. He good. Yeah.
That book came out and you saw your name in print maybe for the first time, and you're like, man, look at this creation that wasn't there before, much like maybe you did with your kids, right?
Yeah.
Look at what I've created. Hello, holding them, the joys, the tears, I'm sure that came perhaps. But is there that moment you had with your book? Do you remember that moment?
Yes. So actually, I literally haven't felt a real physical copy of my book yet. I mean, I've had the ARC, sort of the advanced reader copies and mock drafts of it, but the release date is actually September 1st, but it's out for pre-order now, called Start Where You Are. But I remember, just thinking, this is a lot like the process my wife went through as far as publishing a book. You conceive it as an idea, and that idea turns into an item, but it takes a process of 9 months or however long to birth it. And I still haven't seen the baby come out yet, if you know what I mean. But here's one thing that I do know is that I truly believe God will use it, because it's just a message I feel like is a life message for me, used to point people to Him. And yeah, bro. So that's my sort of perspective on that. And I'm excited about it because, I get into like how there's no resumes that are ever too bad for God. If you look all throughout the scriptures, He hires unlikely people to do His work, and pretty much, everyone, especially like Apostle Paul, David, whoever they were, wherever they were, they were in need of a miraculous God, and He met them there. So, and I believe that's the story for all of us. That's why I love your podcast, bro. As far as like, getting in other people's shoes, like how can we ever know, Man, like as far as the stories and everything are phenomenal, in the theme of it. Like we all have our own stories. Like he uses the unlikely to do the unimaginable, right? As he works in our lives. So I just love it, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that tremendously. Obviously, we love doing it, and if we didn't love doing it, we
Yeah.
probably wouldn't be doing it, right? And so that's kind of where it's at too, right? But this idea of birthing something that wasn't there before, I love what you said, on that was awesome. I followed you on that 100%. But I go back to
Yeah.
this idea, right? Where does it come from? Where does your idea come from to say, you know, I need to do this. This message needs to get out. Where does that all kind of resonate from, and where does that come from? I mean, you talk about going from this crazy lifestyle
Yeah.
of prodigal living, the Bible would maybe call it, and maybe you would call it that as well, to now to where you are now, that fast forward, that transformation, that metamorphosis, if you will. Where does all of that like come from?
Bro, great question. As I go back through the corridors of history and I look at all the misery of my life and also the amazing things that were happening throughout my life, throughout every single like area, facet of my life, God met me there like literally as an 11-year-old boy that was just sexually abused. He met me there. He used like a teacher to speak into my life and point me, one to the scriptures, but also pray over me during that time when I was shot down as a 17-year-old boy who was a college, future college athlete that was about to sign my letter of intent. A day before, I was gunned down, left for dead. I mean, I'm out, I was trying to defend the honor of a young girl that I was dating and literally was at the wrong place, right time with, her ex-boyfriend showing up and God met me there. My coaches weren't there, my parents weren't there, my friends weren't there, but God met me right where I was in the middle of my mess and not only that he saved me, and I had to call out to the Lord a lot like David in the book of Psalms. I cry out to the Lord and he heard my cry. He set my foot upon a rock, gave me a firm place to stand. Like he literally all throughout the scriptures, he's showing his testimony and his goodness through the people of the Bible, but also in our own lives. Whatever suffering anyone's listening is going through right now, God can turn that suffering into songs of joy, even amid the suffering. And I want to speak that over someone out there today, bro, and even you. Like he transforms the unlikely, man. And I'm blown away by how faithful he's been in my life, and I can't help but to share it. And there's many more experiences down the line, but yeah, going all the way up to the point where I was out in LA, just like you were saying, had a house in the valley, a G wagon, sort of what you would think would quote unquote be success, plenty of money in the account, but I was spiritually bankrupt. I was dead in my sins and far from him. I was a hedonist, man. I disregarded God. Everything was like life is short, YOLO. Live it up now. Do what feels good now. Um, and yeah, and God sort of let me go on my sinful way, and then eventually, by the grace of God, he grabbed me. He grabbed me. Yeah, later, thankfully, and I've been clinging on ever since then. Once I was sorrowful for my sins, I repented, turned to him, and gave my life to Christ. And I was born again, man. And now I can just share. I can share what he's done for me, and pray that someone else can experience that love of the Father and know him and seek him and be changed by him forever. Not only now, for all eternity, a fuller, richer life. So,
So
yeah.
can we go back to that day
Uh-huh.
when you were gunned down? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So,
So
yeah.
let me ask some questions around that. So you say you're defending a girl's honor, right? The girl you're dating, her ex-boyfriend shows up
Uh-huh.
and essentially starts shooting. Is that kind of how that goes?
Yes. So literally it was fresh after, we had just went to a game, and then we were getting ready to go to a movie, but in between the movie we did like a little I think it was we got Sonics or something, and we went over to a park and we hung out, had our little slushies, and we were listening to this. Actually, it was a rap song by this rapper named 50 Cent. You know, I was a prideful, egotistical, again, high school football player with this quote unquote, I would say was in my eyes, was one of the prettiest girls in the school. Like I had it all together. My ego was not my amigo, by the way. But as we're sitting in this car and, we're sort of hanging, her phone begins to go off. Brrr, brrr. Then all of a sudden, I reach over, being that prideful, egotistical high school football star, future college football player. I grab her phone and I answer, hello. And then all of a sudden the guy goes, hey, yo, why you with my girl? Why you with my girl? And then I was like, hold on, this is my girl. And like we started going back and forth. I started, basically fighting over the phone. And here goes where wisdom basically goes out the door. And the fool Rashawn, unbeknown to me, giving him the address, right to where I was because of the, the reaction. I was just like, come, let's fight. Then I gave him the exact address where we were. It was at a park that was very popular. And then all of a sudden, about 10 minutes later, you hear this car or this van pull in, and they pull up. 5 guys jump out. I'm not talking about burgers, but they start walking towards us. We start walking towards them. They start walking towards us. And I tell the girl, just, sit in the car. And all of a sudden, I get about 7 steps away. He pulls out a pistol. He reaches for his waistband, pull out a pistol. He waves it in the air. I turn and I run. I slip and I fall. His boys ran. And I'm looking up. He's pointing down. Boom, boom, 2 gunshots. I had just been shot. And then they ran over to the car and peeled out. I was scared out of my mind. I got up and I ran. My heart was beating out of my chest. I was losing consciousness. And I remember diving over to the left side of the car trying to flee any bullets they would try to spray my way again, because I didn't want to literally have them in my life in that moment, which, it was just a scary moment, man. It was really dark and cold that night. And as I'm at the left side of the car near the passenger door, I look up and the girl's gone, no girl anymore. And I'm just on the ground in a warm pool of blood. And that was the moment I just was like, I'm done. I was like, I don't want to die here. Am I going to live? I had many questions going through my head. Like, did I live or did I just live for everyone else, for my coaches, for my parents, for the girl, for, I never got to live out God's purpose for my life. And those little thoughts began to go through my mind. But more importantly, I was like, what's going to happen if I do pass away? I'm going to have to stand before a holy God. Yeah, loving, good, omnipotent, omniscient, all-knowing, all-seeing God who is infinite in wisdom and knowledge and understanding. But he's also a holy and just God that I'm going to have to give an account for, especially if he doesn't see me through the lens of his son's sacrifice. So like there were things that I would hear as a young child. There was a heaven and hell, smoking or non-smoking, and I would have to go to one. And in those moments I was thinking through that. But by the grace of God, here's what happened. Here was amazing. After I sincerely cried out with all of my heart, I had nothing to hold back anymore. In that moment, he sent a man, which I call or consider an angel to this day, to pick me up and take me to the hospital. And it took about 20 minutes. I lost a lot of blood. When I got there, the nurses and, the doc said I shouldn't have even lived because I lost so much. And it was almost close to my artery in the back of my leg, one of the bullets. And then the guy who had took me, his shirt was white, but it was raining red that night. And it reminded me of the Lord's sacrifice for me, man, on that tree. And it was just a heavy night, bro. And I'll never forget that. But yeah, it was just it was although it was a terrible experience, it ultimately pointed me back to one, the brevity of life, but also Jesus' sacrifice for me. And that's why I love the nurse that was there. She was a Christian lady, and she wrote me a little note that said, God has sought you, so seek him, or something like that, or something like she had wrote a little note like he sought you out or something, and I'll never forget that. So I do remember that moment as well. Was pivotal for me. But it was really tough seeing all the fame, quote unquote, the high school football fame. Like I was getting ready to sign to University of Nebraska to play under Coach Callahan, and all my scholarships got stripped. The girl, I never seen her again after that. She up and transferred when her parents found out. The guy went to prison. My friends who were my friends didn't show up, to visit me at my home when I was out of school at that time. It was just a good time for me to really, get things back in a proper perspective and seek the Lord. And that was a defining moment for sure, bro.
First off, thanks for sharing that, man. That's tough.
Definitely.
So where does he help me out? So you're laying on the ground, right? He's standing over you. Where do the bullets go into you at? Where on your body?
So love that. Great question. So what I did, I reacted, and I'm thankful that sort of that adrenaline rush, I threw my legs up really fast as I could, as my back had hit the ground after slipping up on the gravel. But as I'm pulling my legs up, like sort of like some weird exercise or something, he points the gun down. It would look like he was shooting right towards my chest area, but for some reason when he shot, he flicked the gun up and it went, because it was a 380, and it went through my leg. So it went through the back of my hamstring and the back of my knee. So, but it all was flesh. It didn't hit any. It all would hit muscle by the grace of God versus like bone or arteries or any of that, or even I don't even think it affected any of. It may have affected some of my nerves, but it was just, man, it was literally God's grace. I think it was all hamstring, bro. Yeah. Yeah.
Good thing he wasn't a good shot. I mean, I'm not trying to make light of the situation by any means, but maybe even the recoil, maybe he wasn't used to that, and the recoil of the weapon, maybe that led to him maybe misfiring or maybe not hitting your targeted mass, I believe is the term some would use.
Yes.
So going back to that, how old were you when that took place?
I was 17 years old, brother. Close to 18. Yeah.
Okay, so you're 17 years old. You're on your way to Nebraska, essentially, right? I mean, virtually. I mean, you're like days away from being a Cornhusker, right?
Yep.
Okay, so then fast forward to then you're in LA, and what was the turning point there that you're like, you know what? And that's what I guess I'm trying to figure out, this trajectory of your life, or this spectrum, right? Where at 17 you're crying out to God, going, "Man, you saved me for something." That to me would be the greatest wake up call ever. I mean, I don't know. I'm just me being you. Like if I'm in your shoes in this moment, which we are, right? We're in those Pumas, right? Slipping or not, right?
Yes.
I'm thinking, man, that would have been the wake up call. I don't think I would have ever done another bad thing in my life. I don't think I would have ever sped. I don't think I would have ever, cheated on a girl. I don't think I would have ever, I would never have done any of that. But you say that was this amazing wake up call, but then you're out in LA being, the next rap star. So what happened?
Love, man. So here's what happened, bro. There's so many years. So I was trying to pull it off with my own power instead of relying on God's grace to change me from the inside out. So after, I had been shot down, I turned into like this rock stacking sort of like legalist in a way. Like I was like, I have to have all my ducks in a row. Like I have to measure my merits. I have to reimburse God for what he's done for me. And it got so burdensome that I gave up. One, because I didn't have other believers around me. I still had, after I healed and, I ended up signing to a junior college after that. And when you get around even, just people, God sort of put me in a predicament where I was with a ton of different athletes from inner cities and different areas that have been through a lot of mess. But in a way, I sort of used that pain to provoke pride in me in a way, because I would share, yeah, I was shot down, gunned down, and just to make me look good in front of different athletes, which was sickening, knowing that the grace of God saved me from that for good. What the enemy intends for evil, God means for good, but the enemy was trying to get me to use that for evil, which was really weird. But I just didn't have, a Bible that I delighted in. It was more like a duty to me for a long time, because I just didn't understand it. I didn't have people pouring into me. I wasn't being discipled. But here's fast forward, bro. So after junior in college, I signed to the University of Kansas. I'm back on the stage again, quote unquote, at a very juggernaut style school when it comes to sports, especially basketball, really. But I started getting around, women again, and I started getting around, guys just indulging again and things like that. Drugs, was with drug dealers again. Like, it was really crazy, prodigal boy. But fast forward, I straightened up a little bit when I had a kid by one of my friends. I, sex out of marriage, and we end up having a kid. And what ended up happening is I had to get my quote unquote life together. Once, you give birth to a baby, those responsibilities, but also this, you want to have the ability to respond in a way that is going to be beneficial for your kid. It ain't about me anymore, but still it wasn't about God. So what I ended up doing is commissioning to the Army. I went into ROTC, became a first lieutenant in the Army, went to Army Medical School in San Antonio. After finishing Army Medical School, I had found out my cousin was doing some phenomenal things out in Los Angeles. Like, he was in the movie American Reunion. That's the second American Pie movie. And he was the only black guy, quote unquote, in there. And I was like, wow. So comparison and discontentment sort of drove me to go out there and pursue my own dreams. And I was like, if my cousin is out there doing it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go out there. I don't want to be doing a 9 to 5 and working under the hands of the government, even though I love, our service members. I proudly served for 9 years, but I was just like, I want to live the dream life. That's the banner that our generation has been wearing for many years, like the millennials, is go after it and things like that. So when I got there, I ended up connecting with a guy that I knew who was a rap artist out there, but also a lot of Viners. I got really big on social media. My platforms began to explode, and I had an opportunity to sign with the agency in New York called the Fabrizio Agency, which was Soulja Boy's agency, and they connected me to Soulja Boy. And I began to work with him, and then from there, within 2 to 3 years, everything's exploding, but I'm being depleted from the inside out. And then I got down to this moment where it was just like, God spoke to me clearly. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world but yet lose his soul? And I came across the words of Jesus: he that wants to keep his life must lose it, but he that loses his life for my name's sake will gain it. And I began to have all these questions, like, how can I get here? How can I get there? So, yeah, man. And that's sort of how it came about, Neil.
Well, first off, I appreciate that. Thank you. Cause I'm trying to find this, the dots. Do you remember, you remember Dot to Dot as a kid? You ever play with those books?
Yeah.
Where you had to go 1 to 2 to 3, and whatever. I hated those. It was too structured for me. I just was never a fan of those. But I'm trying to figure this out too. And even going back a little ways, right? You talk about being sexually abused at 11, right? And you praying in that moment. Like, first off, that's horrific. Nobody should ever have to endure that. But that should have set you up in my thinking, and maybe this is wrong thinking. I don't know, but that should have immediately set you up for self-esteem issues.
Right? Surely.
Learning to hide, learning to keep secrets, learning to what someone was doing to you was wrong. Obviously, that was wrong, and it is wrong. But taking away your innocence, taking away maybe your view of sexuality, maybe your view of women, maybe your view. Yeah. And again, we don't need to go down that road of what they did to you and all that. That's not what I'm trying to illustrate here. But from 11, then you somehow figure out that you're really good at football.
Yes.
And that's feeding the ego, right? You're
Yep.
like, I no longer have to be ashamed of who I am because now everyone loves me. But it's almost
Boom.
like an abuse situation because you're abusing the fact of people's praise and people's adoration and people's, affection towards you, right?
Yes.
Am I following that?
Right
Okay.
on. Right on.
All right. And then the college thing, and then you have college scouts, I'm guessing, looking at you because if Nebraska's looking at you, I'm sure there's other Division I schools looking at you. Nebraska's not the only one that can scout. I mean, others can as well. So I'm guessing that there's some fame, there's some accolade, but it's all a mask. It's all a charade. If I'm wrong here, obviously correct me. And then you go out to LA because you're jealous, maybe. That's what I hear in that, by the way. Maybe that was wrong.
Yes,
but I hear
100%.
I hear you saying, my cousin's out there. Well, my cousin can do it. I can do it because I'm better than my cousin. Gosh, look at me. Look at Rashard. Look at how great I am, right? Do you know who I am? Nebraska wanted me. Do you know who I am? University of Oregon maybe wanted me. I don't know.
Yeah.
But you hear what I'm saying in that?
Yeah, for sure.
So my question is, knowing all that happened to you, how on earth do you feel in any way that you're worthy of God's love? Because really, you've denied him and denied him and denied him and denied him. Why should he continue to love you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. And I still question, that's why I'm dazzled by his unrelenting love. And here's the thing, it's painted all throughout the scriptures. It's not because of my like what I've done, my merit is like Jesus didn't die for the perfect version of me. Jesus died, he said explicitly, he did not come for the righteous people, but those who are sick and need a doctor. And when I just grasp that every single day and I'm renewing my mind every single day, it's allowing me to really walk in the truth that he said to set us free. In John 8:32, he says, you will know the truth and the truth will set you free. So discovering who I am, not outside of Christ, but in Christ, helps me to realize the power of my identity in him, not in and of myself. And that changes everything. And it even helps me to win the battle of my own mind every single day. And I can take those thoughts captive when I want, because it's no longer I who live, but it's Christ that lives in me. And that's what I have to remind myself of every single day. And we do. And I think that's what helps us free ourselves from the burdens of our past and move forward into, the future, right here in the present.
No, I love that too. And to me, that's what I was trying to figure out with your story. When we were doing some research on you, I watched some of your YouTube stuff and was checking some of that stuff out. And I was like, man, this guy is fascinating to me because it feels like he had everything, and even your own words today, you really had a lot for you. You had a lot going on. And I'm thinking, why would he give up all of that? Why on earth would he give up all of that to go back to sharing Jesus when he had all of that? That to me was so foreign to me. So I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, but that to me was fascinating.
Bro, I'm so glad you're speaking into this because when I began to think of the words of Solomon, whenever he said meaningless, everything is meaningless. It's been like a sanctification process reminding me of the brevity of life, but how also things crash and burn, relationships come and go. Our hairs turn black, they go from black to gray, everything, roses die, heroes cry, whatever it is. Every single day, things are vanishing and fading away. And literally, if I were to cling on to anything in this earth, what profit is it? So really this approach that I have these days is open hands, open hearts. I just want Jesus, man. And I'm here just to steward, love, and serve and give my life away. As tough as it is, to want to be, I've been learning a lot, man. It's just crazy. It's crazy when you begin to view this world the way God does and the way it rightfully should be viewed. And that's what set me free. I don't know. It's crazy.
No, it is crazy. And to me, again, I just think to myself, like, I don't know. I just think to myself, why on earth would you want to give any of that up? To go serve Jesus. I mean, there are those that would say you probably need to get your head checked because you're making money, you're living your dreams, you're probably about to sign with a record deal if you're working with Soldier Boy. I mean, by the way, I gotta ask my 13-year-old who that is because I'm not really familiar with him. So either that dates me or something. I'm not really sure. I think I've heard of him. I'm not positive, but
yeah. Crank
but
that Soldier Boy. Whoo. Nah, he had he had several Grammy Award songs back in the day. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. That's so funny.
So I'm really dating myself then is what you're telling me, right? I'm just too old for this?
No, not at all, bro. I don't think you're probably better off not really knowing right now. So yeah.
Okay, so going back to LA, like what was the wake up call in LA? What was the alarm that went off that you're like, man, this is not it? And to me, if we look in Luke, right? I know you've quoted a lot of scripture today, but in Luke chapter 15, verse 11, we talk about the prodigal son, right? He comes to the end of himself. He's actually feeding pigs, which if you know the context, and if you don't mind, do you have your Bible handy with you, by the way? Do you have something that you could read this for me?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's go to Luke. Let's go to Luke 15, 15:15. Do you mind reading that? Luke 15:15.
Love
you got a
it.
second?
I can read it right now. I'm going right over, trying to get there quick. Okay.
All right, no worries.
I'm here now. So,
all right, Luke 15:15.
Okay, love it. So here we go. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs.
Yeah, go ahead and read 16 and 17. Yeah. 17 and 18. Yeah. So let's go 15 to 18.
16. He longed to fill his stomach with pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death."
See, I picked that passage. I picked that passage on purpose because when I'm hearing your story, I'm hearing this again. Maybe this is me being judgy, so maybe I need to reread the Bible because I think I might be sitting in a seat of judgment, and I'm not. I promise I'm not. But I want to ask this because I think to myself, at 11, you had an opportunity to come to Jesus and really get out of that doldrum and that dungeon and that darkness and that awfulness that you were in, and something pulled you out of that, right?
Yes.
Someone pulled you out of that. And then we fast forward to, at 17, you're shot, left for dead, virtually. Guy comes along and saves you. That didn't wake you up. You go out to LA and you have really the pride of life and the hunger of eyes, and you're just indulging in anything you can and everything you can. Now, it was that hiding more pain from when you were 11. Some would say maybe. Some would say you're still trying to find your identity, especially being... you called yourself the millennial, right? Trying to find yourself, trying to make a name, trying to get yourself on a platform.
Yes.
Trying to build up Rashard rather than build up him being Jesus, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So where was that? Right. Where was that moment where we talk about in verse 17, where he says he came to the end of his senses and he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death?" Where was that starving to death moment for you?
So yeah, the starving to moment, is the starving to death moment for me came when I realized, the G-Wagon couldn't do it, the woman couldn't do it, the women, the porn industry, the lady that I was talking to who was actually in the porn industry, and like money didn't do it, none of it did it, and I was starving when I was really hungry for something, a new taste buds on the tongue of my heart. I needed a whole new taste bud for something new and fresh, and God knew exactly who that was. It was himself. I needed his mercy. I needed his kindness. I needed to be revealed his love. And knowing, what I know now, it's reminds me of exactly what David said in Psalms 40, where he said, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he turned and he heard my cry. Again, he lifted me up out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. And then he sets my foot on a rock, and he gives me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth. He gave me, a new song, but also a hymn of praise to our God. And many will see and fear and put their trust in the Lord. But it's just this beautiful thing is when we cry out to the Lord, he will hear our cry. And not only that, he will lift us up. But first we got to acknowledge our need for help, right? This standpoint of wallowing in the mud suggests, like, I'm guessing, a pig in a muddy sort of pen. We're not pigs, but oftentimes we can feel that way because of the dirt, be it anxiety, depression, anger, lust, jealousy, or just the overwhelming, sin and pain that we're in. And I just think the good news is that God, just like he met him there and he came to his senses, he went home, and then when he got home, his father ran to him and, embraced him, threw a robe on him, and there was a celebration. And that's what I got to experience, in that low and messy place. God met me there, just like David, just like the prodigal son, and everything else was void. The pleasures were void, the power, the people, the places I visited. I could be in a private jet in my PJs, pajamas, but I was still empty. The personal gain I was seeking for was in vain without Jesus. Yeah, it was just terrible. I came to my senses though. I'm so thankful that he opened up my heart.
So first off, thanks for sharing that, and I mean that. Thank
Definitely.
you. Right? It's sometimes tough getting real.
Yeah.
Right? It's tough. But I want to get real.
Okay.
Real. How do the kids say it?
Really real.
Did I say it right?
Really real.
I want to get really real. Okay, I want to get really real. Again, you can take me back to that park. I visually went there with you. You articulated that well. Like, I'm in that moment with you, and I can't even imagine what that's like.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't want to go down the road of when you were 11, those dark places, the person that did those things to you, or maybe people that did those things to you when you were 11. I don't want to go there because that's too dark for me. That's way too dark.
Definitely.
But what I want to ask is, are you driving on I-5? Are you driving past, Dodger Stadium? Are you in Staples Center one night? I mean, what was that moment, that exact moment that you're like, you know what? I'm in the pigsty. This is not my life.
Love it. Man, so Neil, that same night, I guess this is a continuation, because here's what happened. You remember when I was telling you I had the pistol in my mouth and I'm shaking and I'm profusely sort of sweating and I'm at the end of it. The USC girl walked out of my life. It all seemed like everything was crashing and burning the same week. My best friend one of my friends had committed suicide. I had a few friends walk away from me. Also, on the other end of things, it was just so much pressure from work in trying to maintain this fake facade that I had on out in Los Angeles, which is everyone's for the nitty gritty. Everyone's trying to climb the ladder. People, I mean, as much as, there may be some light in their hearts, and even at that time, we all have this selfish gain and these different things we're trying to do to get on top, even if it means pushing other people down on our way up. And I remember just thinking, like, what am I doing here? But when I had that pistol in my mouth, like, in and out of my mouth, I was thinking of two things. Number one, if I pull this trigger again, I'm going to have to meet my creator. Number two is I don't want to shoot myself right now and live through it and have to endure that same pain that I felt when I was 17. because I know the havoc that a bullet can wreak on a person's body, and I don't want to live through this. So either way, I'm going to meet the Creator, the just God of the universe, and having to give an account, or I'm going to live through this again, and I'm going to be miserable, and half my face going to be blown off. So, needless to say, here's where the big moment came. Out of nowhere, in this dark room, I'm in this dark place. I'm trying to tell myself to wait, just wait another few hours. Maybe the sunshine of a bright, sunny California morning will change things in this cloud of depression and go. But here's what came before that. There was a flash before my eyes, and there was a cell phone on my bed, and it was my phone. And I went and grabbed it, and I swiped right, and it was the only Christian girl that I had knew. That I had followed, that I was friends with on Facebook at this time, who had just posted a post in the nick of, on the brink of, my suicide. And here's what it said. Oh, how wide, how deep, how vast the love of God is. And nothing in all creation can separate us from this love that's found in Christ Jesus. And then as I was reading and reading, I began weeping and weeping. I read it like 20 times. And as I kept reading it, my heart began to soften more and more. And then this brother right here had a face flooding with tears. And I began to just say, again, why am I here? I began to question God a lot, like, I was wrestling with God, wrestling with the Lord a lot, like, Jacob. And I began to go on the bed and I fall asleep, and I had an OBE that night. And that was like, this is that last and final sign. OBE is an out of body experience. And I knew God, he had to do, like, he really had to open up my eyes, and he did it through, by the way of showing me that I'm a spiritual being housed in a physical body. Like, this is dirt that I'm living in, but we are spiritual beings. And he gave me a glimpse on more of the spiritual side of things by allowing me to experience that OBE that same night. And here's where it was just like, wow. Like, when I woke up, it was about 4 a.m. I was so scared after that experience. I turned on the light. I run back to the bed. I throw the covers over my head. And here's where things took a even greater turn. As I'm laying in bed, I began to think, just all the things that isn't right with my life, and trying to figure out what I need to do to get right with God. But he was slowly just guiding me along this journey as I continue to acknowledge him and acknowledge his name in Jesus. And he gave me a prompting or utterance within me to look underneath the bed. And this house that I was living in was a house where my agent put me in. And it wasn't necessarily my house, but it was the agency's home that they would bring artists through frequently. And I look underneath this bed, right? So I pull out this suitcase I had never seen before. And this suitcase, after I cracked it open, had a bunch of dirty, musty clothes. I mean, it wasn't a great suitcase at all. But what was great was there was the book that would awaken my soul. Do you know what book that was sitting on the top of the suitcase?
I have no idea. I mean, I have some guesses, but I have no idea.
Okay, it was the Bible. Yes, that's the book for me. I stand upon the word of God. Yes, the Bible. I cracked open the book, and as I read it, it began to read me. I read this verse. I went to the red letters, and it took me straight here. The Lord took me straight here, straight to the red letters, and it said, "Oh, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world, but yet lose his soul?" And I began to read the teachings of Jesus, and began to go through all these passages. Was like about denying ourselves and picking up our cross and following Jesus and things like that. But what really stuck out to me was when I basically finished reading. I ended up going I got my book bag, and I ended up going into the city bus that morning, and I literally left everything there. And I stole that Bible that day. As a matter of fact, the Bible's the number one stolen book, like, ever. Like, it is the number one stolen book in the world, and I stole that book that night. But I finally, got to this place where I gave up on everything, and the Bible became, it was gold to me at that point. Or, and I literally took that bus all the way down to downtown LA. And when I got to downtown LA, I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna ride the Greyhound bus. I got a transfer and I rode the Greyhound bus all the way back to Oklahoma City with my face plastered in the Word of God. And I kept reading it all the way until I got home, and I began to share with, a single mom with like 3 kids next to me. Has she heard anything about Jesus? We began to have conversations, and homeless people that were on that bus. And it was just amazing. 24 hours, just my face in the Word of God, reading Proverbs. Many are the plans of a man's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails. And like, I had many, many plans, but it was God's purpose that prevailed. And needless to say, I went home, back home, quote unquote, to Oklahoma, and I laid on my brother's floor. He was a college student at the time. So yeah, they had no furniture really besides the stuff in their rooms. And I just laid on his floor for like 3-4 months until, God began, sort of to get me discipled and around the right men of God. And yeah, it changed everything though, bro. And I ended up working for a county jail. Then he gave me a heart for people again through that. And I was a detention officer, and I learned to share the gospel and become an evangelist in a jail. So it was a fun journey, but it was definitely one that took a lot of pruning and a lot of pain as he was purging things out of me that needed to go. So yeah, that's what it looked like, bro.
Well, first off, thank you. That obviously finishes our dot to dot, if you will. Do you have a little extra time?
Oh, yeah.
We're okay.
Definitely.
I just want to make sure. All right. So a couple things come to mind when you're retelling that. So I'm thinking about you going back on the Greyhound. Again, I can picture that. I can picture you in this, probably $1 million home in LA.
Yeah.
With the gun in your mouth. I can picture that. I can visually see you there. I'm thinking about you driving back on the Greyhound in Oklahoma, your phone blowing up. Rashad, where are you? Rashad, we need you for this deal. Rashad, you said you were going to do this. Rashad, this needs to get done. Why hasn't this gotten done? Text messages, emails, voicemails, perhaps, as you come in and out of coverage, as you cross this great United States.
Yeah.
And what kept coming to mind as you're telling your story, can we go back to the Bible? I know you like the Bible.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You said it, and you even sang it a little bit, right? So going back to this verse, do you know what this verse is? Matthew 10:33. You know that one? If you don't have it memorized, it's okay. You can look it up.
Matthew 10:33.
Yep, it's one of my favorites.
Oh, Matthew 10. I actually off the top don't know, but once you say it, I'll know it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. So I'll read it for you. So this is out of the Living Version for those that are curious about versions, and we can go down a really crazy trail on that. But whoever denies me here on earth, I will also deny him before my Father in heaven.
Love that.
There are many passages in the Bible that haunt me. Stay with me. Stick to me. That one always has, because I never want to be in a situation or a place or, whatever, an engagement, a conversation where I'm denying him. And so I'm thinking to myself, again, going back to your story, you've denied. And there's this great guy, and I know you know him, but maybe not know him personally, but you know of him, Peter.
Yeah.
Going back to a pinprick or a pin dot, Thursday night, before even Good Friday, Thursday night, the garden, he's out in the courtyard, and Jesus even told him, he said, listen, you're going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. Peter's like, no, I'm with you to the end. I got you. # brother, I'm with you for life.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And what happens? He denies him, right? We know the story. You know the story.
True.
And Jesus, in the rooster crows, and Jesus looks at him. Scripture says he looks at him, and Peter knows immediately what happened, and he goes away and he weeps.
Yeah.
Because he realizes what he did was wrong. And I'm thinking about you
Very
in this
true.
whole time, going from, again, L.A. to Oklahoma City. I'm guessing that was not just a 3-hour tour. That's a Gilligan's Island reference, but it took a while to get there. How much did you have to deny the world? Deny those people wanting to get your attention. Deny that lifestyle to say, no. I'm free. How much did that take place?
You know what? Thankfully, here's the thing. You know what? Thankfully, when I left that night to just leave everything at that home, I left my charger as well. I did take my phone, but I left my charger, and my phone was almost on E because I didn't charge it the night before. So I literally was at a place where I was phoneless for the next 24 hours that I was on buses and only with the Bible in the bus. And at this point, God began to use the Bible to even, for some reason, I believe once I acknowledged my sins, once I was sorrowful and I repented of my sins throughout that process, God gave me this sense of grace to be able to put my trust in Jesus as I was reading his words, and it began to transform me. I think like Ezekiel talks about in 36:24, where he says, I'll give you a new heart and a new spirit. My desires began to change, not like all of them overnight in a way, but I began to get to this place where God was charging me up by being connected with the source instead of all the resources that I was so used to clinging to over that span of 24 hours. But it was crazy. Once I stepped off that bus, I felt like a new, renewed man. And I was a whole new person. And I began, when I got back on social media, which I set it down for a while, but I began to, even my brother immediately and everyone, I began to share my story. I couldn't hold it in anymore. It was like the Holy Spirit had filled me up, like, almost like the day of Pentecost, but I was still broken. You don't go from sunshine to daisies and suicide and all that to being some, I don't, there was a sense that God was doing something new and fresh in me, but I still had, things I was wrestling with, but there was just this innate passion to share what I'd had just experienced from a new, fresh place that I'd never had experienced before. And sadly, I got a lot of backlash. Nobody believed me. My brothers was like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, you're Rashawn. You're not, get out of here. And like my parents would do the same. Like nobody believed me for like 4 or 5 years that I was really walking this thing out. And I mean, they seen it through my life, but they couldn't take it for what it was because my past was just too crazy. And I think that's what happens to a lot of believers at first. It's just like, of course, you're going to get denied by the world all over. I lost tons of followers by that. And, tons of people who said they were with me once I start proclaiming the name of Christ. It's a tough thing to do, but we don't live for people's opinions, but rather for God's truth and, being obedient to him to please him, not the world. So, and that changed everything over time. I just was like, I'm going to use everything for him. All these platforms. I had almost right under 1 million followers across all my platforms at that point. And they became gods because they weren't mine to begin with. And, I'm thankful, that he humbled me. And, he gave me a new future, a new hope. So, and,
Last question or maybe last conversation as we try to wrap up, because I want to be sensitive to your time.
Oh, you're fine,
okay.
bro. Yeah.
So can I ask something that's maybe inappropriate?
Yeah, definitely. Bro.
All right, here we go.
I'm all about authenticity.
All right, here we go. So how old are you?
Right now, 33.
So you mean to tell me you go 24 hours on a bus with a dead cell phone?
Yes.
At 33 years old.
Crazy. Oh no, when that happened?
Yeah.
I was 20.
Okay, so you mean that's even better. So you mean to tell me at 26 you go 24 hours without a charged cell phone?
Exactly. On a bus.
That in itself is a miracle.
With the Bible.
I'm serious. No, I'm playing a little bit, but I'm not. There's a point there. I think, and I'm my hands up on this. I'm shamefully admitting it, even on my own show. Going 24 hours without my phone completely shut off. Boy, that would be hard. That would be hard. That would be extremely hard. And so that's why I'm asking. At 26, I'm trying to fathom that. And it's like trying to do long division, while blindfolded. And most people don't even know what long division is. They're going to have to Google that because of this new Common Core math, but that's another story. But I say that to say this is that 24 hours on a bus and all you have is this Bible that you stole, which I love. That's a great story, by the way. But going 24 hours without your phone, without even wanting to know. So then take me back. You're in Oklahoma City. You're living on the floor. You're the prodigal life you expect, maybe not expect, but you're just trying to get whole and healthy again, right?
Yes, 100%.
Getting rid of everything. I mean, why do you think the Israelites spent 40 years in the desert? Well, because they were disobedient, and also God was trying to get Egypt out of them. God was trying to get Egypt out of them. And so you're trying to get LA out of you. You're trying to get Rashard out of Rashard. I know that sounds weird to say it that way, but you're trying to deny yourself and pick up his cross and follow him daily. And it sounds like you were trying to do that. But again, I'm thinking once that phone got fully charged, if you have all these people and all these people following you, right or wrong, that's not my opinion, or that's not my place to give my opinion there. But, man, that phone must have just lit up like a Christmas tree with messages and notifications and taggings. And so how did you combat all of that? To not walk back, in this sense, to Egypt. To not walk back to what you had. Because as much as the Israelites were slaves, that's what the Bible says, not that you're a slave, but you know what I mean, because you're not. But you were a slave to those things. You had to leave that. You had to leave. You had to walk away from that lifestyle that kept you in bondage. Yeah. And so what happened once you got that phone fully charged?
Love that. You know what? Attention is one of the most valuable commodities ever, right? And at this point, as I'm leaving LA, I was now in tune, or God had my attention. I was an audience of one, essentially. And also, when someone's going through depression, I was going through deep, deep depression at that time. I wanted to hide from the world. I wanted to hide from everyone, even if it cut off all my business deals. Like there was not, like at that point, I didn't want anything to do with the world. And I went into hiding. And I even, to the point, turned all my Avies, this was our, Twitter pictures, profile pictures, into black dots. Like where I'm gone. Like literally. And it was like more out of a depression, a deep, dark place. And I even turned my pictures dark on social media. And I end up going sort of AWOL from everything for like, maybe was it about 3 months or something, where I was just straight off social media. I was off everything, disconnected from the world. However, I did have my phone. There were temptations, when I'm back in my hometown and people began to see me out, they began to, see me, with different associates, family members, then there's those influences that aren't good for me that came around. But at the end of the day, by the grace of God, he gave me sort of the courage and strength to walk back into a church. And I went into the right church the first time that had amazing men of God who discipled me, who washed me with the word, who encouraged me through the days where I didn't want, like, because there's a moment where you come to Christ and everything is good, everything is great. But when you walk through the suffering part, that's when people want to shrink back. But I'm so thankful that God uses people and the men of God to, sort of help you grow in your understanding and knowledge of him and, the word and why we face these things. And God gave me a teachable, humble spirit that wanted to learn. And he also built my faith by using people to fuel my soul through, the word of God and teaching and worship. And like, it changed everything for me, how I viewed. And I pretty much went in hiding, to say the least. And I stayed away from, like, I think it goes back to Psalms 1. Blessed are those who do not walk in step with the wicked, nor sit in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers. But blessed are those who meditate on God's word day and night, for they will be prosperous and successful in all they do. And I think that's where I was literally able to shine. I was in, as far as, the light of the glory of the gospel to shine through me, because it was about association for me at that point. I mean, I couldn't even go out and be with a lot of sinners at that point. I was just too like, I don't want to say gullible, or, well, I was too, I was like fresh meat I was a baby Christian. So I needed to be around, people who were going to build me up in the faith. And then there were times where, God sent me out in the county jail, but he had me ready. He grew me a lot there as a CO officer, working with murderers all the way to Thunder cheerleaders that just got a DUI, NBA cheerleaders that just got a DUI, and learning how to minister to them and love on them and meet them where they are. And that's where a lot of the books Start Where You Are was birthed as well, through that ministry within that jail. Yeah, which is fascinating. So, that's how it sort of went, Neil.
I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. So as we wrap up, because we've gone over a little bit, and Rashard's been so gracious with his time, and I want to send him on his way with some well wishes. But last question, and then I want to give you an opportunity to talk about the book and where people can get it and all that stuff. So last question.
Okay.
We'll talk about the book, and then we'll play a game, because it's fun to end with a game, right? We like games sometimes?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love it.
All right, so here we go. So last question. How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as a man who pleased God, and loved God, and loved people, and that's about it. Yeah, really simple as that.
All right, man, that's great.
Yeah.
So how do people get a hold of the book, and where can they get it and all that?
Awesome. Anywhere you buy books, you can grab it, like Barnes and Nobles, Amazon, just anywhere. The Forward's by Manny Pacquiao, so I don't know how many of you guys may like some boxing, but he's an awesome man of God. I've been a missionary in the Philippines for like 3 years now, and so he has a powerful story as well, and an amazing testimony, and he wrote the Forward. It's a powerful book because it points to Christ, and it's like a crush course to salvation, and all of it points to the gospel. So trying to get it out there in the world, hopefully, just to help some people, whoever, even if it's 1 to 3 people. Man.
Got it. Thanks so much. And we, of course, will link all of that in our show notes, how you can get a hold of his book. And so we're excited to get that information in your hands. So here's our game.
Awesome.
We like to call Senseless. So this is just a fun way that we end the show. So we got, you do know, Rashard, we have 5 senses, right? You're aware of that?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
Ooh, I don't want to watch.
Just checking. I just want to make sure. Some people are still maybe on the fence on that. So we have, of course, 5 senses, and then 6 is our wild card. So we got a die here. North Carolina light blue cup, by the way. Oh, I love it when this number comes up. So I rolled for you because you're in the other O state, Oklahoma, not in Oregon. Also not to be confused with Ohio. So there are our O states, in case you were wondering. So number 6 is this. You get dinner or lunch or breakfast, your choice. You get a meal with one person, dead or alive. Who would it be and why? So where are you going to eat, and then who are you going to go with, dead or alive?
Amazing. So I would go to the Mediterranean Sea. Outside of going with, the Lord Jesus Christ, I would go with Apostle
I was just going to say,
Paul.
that's the easy answer, right? Jesus, right? I'd go with Jesus.
Yeah. I would go with Apostle Paul because I'm fascinated by his life, and I would love to hear stories about him being shipwrecked off the Mediterranean, and just his life and journey. I feel like he's one of the most interesting people who ever walked the planet, of course, outside of Jesus. And I think, Solomon would be someone else, but that I would love to sit down with, and because he was so wise on different levels.
So Rashard, thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate it so much. Just want to say thank you for giving us some moments today. We, of course, will link all of your book information in our show notes, and would love to hopefully have people get information in their hands, or provide information in their hands so they can get a hold of your book. You get one final thought, and then I'll close. How's that?
Yes. Okay, awesome, bro. So thankful for the opportunity to speak into you and your audience and, share my story. And I just want to let anyone out there know, again, start where you are. You're not too far to be reached, not too broken to be fixed, not too dirty to be cleansed, and not too unworthy to be loved. God, he can meet you wherever you are today. So just be encouraged by that and know that this is just the beginning. He can make all things new. Just run to him, okay? Woo! That's it, man.
I love that. Love that so much. Guys, thank you again, Rashawn. Thanks for coming on. And guys, I just want to close with this just simple thought, right? We don't know someone's story. We don't know where they've been. We don't know where they've walked. And to me, it's so awesome that when you finally get to know somebody, you get to see that there's more to the story. There's more than beyond what you see. We often say, you can't judge a book by its cover. You really got to judge it by its content. And I think today, we can look into Rashawn's life and we can see that there has been substantial content and there's substantial changes. And guys, I just want to encourage you, if you're interested in the book, again, check out the show notes. That'll be available for you. We, of course, would love for you to do that. And we're so excited that we got an opportunity to sit with him today. So just remember, guys, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. On behalf of executive producer Garrett and myself, Neil Matthews, we, of course, want to invite you back next week as we try on other people's shoes. Thank you so much for joining us on Other People's Shoes. As you know, I'm your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining us this week. I am so excited that we got a chance again to sit with Rashawn. Guys, he is an amazing young man and is doing amazing stuff. So if you guys are interested in learning not only more about his book, but what he's doing on social media, we, of course, have linked all of that in our show notes. By the way, the book name, just to give you some more information, Start Where You Are. So guys, I don't know about you. Sometimes we just have to start where we are and go forward. Great perspective, great insight today, so I want to thank him so much for that. Speaking of thanking people, I want to thank my very good friend Adria Wilkins. She wrote a book, Joy Box Journal, and we gave that away last month, so hopefully you were part of that. But we want to thank Adria right now. She turned us on to this amazing lady named Evelyn, and we're going to talk to Evelyn next week. In fact, here's a little sneak preview of next week's episode.
He did mention abortion at that point, and my husband and I both were like, no, absolutely not a consideration. We're not going there. And the doctor was actually very kind and respectful and left it there. And then he said something else to go along with what the nurse said. He said, do you have faith? And I started tearing up because no doctor had asked me that yet, or nurse or what have you. And I said, yes, we have faith.
That is right. We are going out to the great state of Florida. Now, of course, we're going in our imagination, but I have been out there multiple times. In fact, I've booked us first-class tickets, so we're going to fly out there next week. Again, in our imagination, don't freak out. I know COVID's still going on. We are super excited to sit with Evelyn next week and hear more about her amazing son, Samuel, and you'll learn more about him next week in next week's episode. Of course, that happens on Wednesday. Wednesday where? opspodcast.com. Each and every Wednesday, they're available for you there. Please, if you are interested in hearing more about our show or would like to give us some feedback or maybe even would like to be a future guest like Evelyn, right? Please reach out to us at 203-548-7463. That's 203-548-7463. That, of course, is a voicemail and text-friendly line, and we, of course, would love to hear from you. Speaking of loving to hear from you, we, of course, are on the big three on social media. That, of course, being Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We would love for you to like us, follow us, and tweet us there. Each and every day, we do post daily, an inspirational quote, something to kind of get you motivated, get you going, and we, of course, would love to interact with you on social media there. Of course, on behalf of executive producer Garrett and myself, Neil Matthews, we, of course, want to say thank you so much for listening. And guys, remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Until next Wednesday, when we get a chance to walk in other people's shoes.